My daughter invited me to her engagement dinner, then asked if I'd mind just staying low-key so I wouldn't make her mom uncomfortable. I ended up helping the caterer in the back. Nobody even knew I was her father. What happened after was such a big mess. Let me quickly thank you for your continuous support. This means a lot to us. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel. It will be great if you can leave a comment on which city you are watching from. We might just give you a shout-out in our next story. Today's special shout-out goes to Harold Sam from New York. We are glad you enjoy our stories. Now let's go deeper into the story. My name's Daniel. I'm a facilities manager for a university hospital. Been doing it 22 years. I know how to fix things. I know how to keep things running behind the scenes without making noise. That's always been my role at work, in marriage, and I guess, even in fatherhood. People like me, the quiet ones, were only noticed when something breaks. Or when someone needs money. Funny how those two things end up feeling the same. It started with the invitation to my daughter's engagement dinner. I remember the text. Not a call, not even a voice note. Just a message that said, "Hey, Dad. Wanted to let you know we're doing a dinner next Saturday for the engagement. Would love if you could come. Just, if you don't mind, could you stay kinda low-key?" Mom's still adjusting, and I don't want things to get awkward. That was it. Not, "Can't wait to see you." Not, "Thank you for helping with the down payment." Just that one line. Stay low-key. You ever read a message so many times that the punctuation starts to feel like an insult? That was me. I stared at that text like it owed me an apology. And then I replied, like I always do, with a simple, "Of course. See you there." I wore my nicest shirt. Got there early. Parked down the street. Thought I'd maybe help out, make myself useful, because what else do you do when your presence is a problem? The caterer thought I was part of the crew. Asked me to carry folding chairs in. I said sure. Helped plate desserts. Arranged the wine on the bar. I knew a few of the guests in passing, but no one really recognized me. No one even asked who I was. At some point, her fiancé's uncle shook my hand and said, "Food's great, brother, thank you." I smiled. Didn't correct him. Why would I? My ex-wife walked in wearing a navy dress I'd paid for once upon a time. She kissed cheeks, held court, laughed too loud. Our daughter glowed next to her, a little too eager, like someone putting on a performance for people who never really knew her. I watched from the back. No one introduced me. No seat was saved. No glass was raised in my name. I spent the whole evening standing near the back exit, sipping warm lemonade and trying not to look like I was waiting to be asked to leave. When they gave speeches, I wasn't mentioned, not even as a footnote. She thanked her mom for being her rock through everything. I guess I was just the soil, the silent base beneath it all, nothing more. You tell yourself you're imagining it, that maybe it's just an oversight. But your body knows. Your gut knows. That silence isn't accidental. It's curated. It's chosen. After the cake was cut and the fake laughter died down, I left early. Slipped out the same back door I'd used to carry in the trays. No one noticed. Or if they did, they didn't stop me. I sat in my truck for a long while after. Didn't turn on the engine. Just watched the lights from inside flicker across the windshield like ghosts dancing on glass. It was then I realized something I hadn't let myself admit for years. They'd already written me out of the story. I was just the guy paying for the set design. You ever feel invisible and responsible at the same time? Like a shadow holding up a house. That was me. That's been me. And the thing is, I never asked for applause. Never wanted center stage. I just thought there'd be a chair at the table. Just one. Somewhere near the edge. But apparently even that was too much. I went home and opened my laptop. Stared at the spreadsheet I kept. Every payment I'd made toward the wedding. Venue deposit. Photographer. Catering. Customized invitations. Dress fittings. Almost $28,000 spent so far, and the wedding was still 5 months out. All that, and I'd just been mistaken for staff. I closed the file and didn't sleep that night. Not from anger. Not even hurt. Just a kind of clarity that shows up like cold water over the face. Here's what I started thinking about that night. What would happen if I disappeared from the equation? Not just physically, but financially, emotionally, narratively. What if I gave them exactly what they asked for? Low-key. You know, most people think revenge has to be loud, explosive, but there's something much sharper about silence. especially the kind you can't undo, the kind that unravels things from the inside out. I didn't make a plan that night, but I did start watching. Not them, me. I started noticing how easily I gave people the benefit of the doubt, how often I accepted crumbs and said thank you, how many times I paid for things I wasn't even allowed to attend. That night wasn't the turning point. Not yet, but it was the first time I saw the machine from the outside, saw how it ran on my guilt, my willingness to not make it awkward, my refusal to fight for space. They didn't silence me. I handed them the volume dial, and I started to wonder, what happens when I turn it all the way down? After that night, I started keeping my mouth shut in a different way. Not the submissive silence I'd practiced for years, the kind that hopes if you're quiet long enough, people might finally notice you. No, this was surgical, observant, the kind of silence that measures people, not forgives them. I stopped asking about wedding plans, stopped offering help, stopped replying with sure, happy to before the request even landed. I didn't pull back with anger, I pulled back with precision. And when you do that, when you start watching instead of participating, you begin to see the truth more clearly than you ever did before. It wasn't just the engagement dinner. It was a pattern, a slow, consistent erasure that I'd let happen because I told myself it was temporary. After the divorce, I figured my daughter needed time. I didn't contest custody, didn't fight when my ex painted herself as the single mother hero. I thought staying out of the spotlight would keep things peaceful. You know how many birthdays I sat in the back for? How many report cards I only saw after asking twice? I justified it all. Told myself, she knows I'm here. She knows I care. But the truth is, kids don't remember your intentions. They remember your presence. Or your absence. About a month after the engagement dinner, I got an email from her wedding planner. No greeting. Just a list of updated invoices and the due dates for the second round of payments. I stared at it for 5 minutes before I realized something. I wasn't even CC'd on the email chain with the vendors. I was just the funding source. Not Dad, not co-host, not even Daniel. Just the guy who paid the bills. I scrolled down and saw a PDF with a seating chart mock-up. Her mother's name was there. Her new husband's too. Table 1, of course. My name? Nowhere. So I called her. I didn't want to text this time. I thought maybe a voice-to-voice would shake something loose. She answered, sounded distracted. Hey, Dad. What's up? I just got an email from your planner, I said calmly. Oh, cool. Everything looking good. I wasn't on the seating chart. There was a pause. Oh, yeah. I meant to talk to you about that. It's not finalized. Who am I sitting with? Well, we thought maybe you just kind of float. Say hi to everyone. You know, low-key. There it was again. That word. Like a slap with a velvet glove. Low-key. You're seating your mom and her husband at table 1, I said. And you want me to float. It's just complicated, Dad. Mom's still sensitive. I'm just trying to keep things smooth. You know how she gets. I almost laughed. I almost said, you mean how she lies, rewrites history, and sucks the air out of every room until she's the only one breathing? But I didn't. I just said okay, and hung up. That night, I sat with every invoice I'd saved on my laptop. I'd been tracking things for tax reasons, but now I studied it like evidence. Venue deposit, $5,000. Paid. Photographer, $1,800. Paid. Custom menus, $850. Paid. Caterer, $3,000. Paid. I wasn't just funding a wedding. I was bankrolling a narrative. A world in which I was a background character who quietly handed over his wallet and then disappeared before the first dance. So I called my bank. Started with the venue. Hi, this is Daniel Merton. I'd like to cancel the scheduled payment linked to reservation 48922. They asked why. I said, there's been a change of plans. I didn't sound angry. I sounded calm, deliberate. Because it wasn't rage I felt. It was resolve. A quiet kind of conviction that grows in the place grief used to live. Then I called the printer for the custom menus. Same thing. There's been a change of plans. The caterer. The florist. The linen rental company. One by one, I pulled the threads. Slowly. Quietly. No announcements. No threats. I didn't even tell my daughter. Why would I? She'd asked me to be low-key. I was just honoring the spirit of her request. A ghost doesn't make noise. It just drifts away and lets the living deal with the cold. There's a line people cross where disappointment turns into indifference. That's when the danger really begins. When someone no longer needs you to understand, or apologize, or even acknowledge what you did. When they stop asking and start subtracting. That's what I was doing now. Subtracting myself from the story. From their version of it, anyway. A week later, I got a group email from the wedding planner. Apparently, the caterer was confused about payment, and the venue hadn't confirmed the final schedule. My daughter forwarded it to me with a note. Can you check on this? I didn't reply. She called me that evening. Hey, Dad, can you call the caterer? I think there's a mix-up. There's no mix-up, I said, cutting her off. A beat of silence. What do you mean? I mean I canceled the payments. All of them, she stammered. Wait, why? I waited a second before I answered. Not to be cruel, just to give the silence room to breathe. Then I said, you asked me to stay low-key. I'm just doing my part. She didn't speak. Not right away. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't try to fill the silence for her. I let her sit in it. You can't just pull out like that, Dad. Everything's scheduled. You never included me, I said. Not in planning. Not in seating. Not in speeches. I was just the ATM. So I closed the account. You're punishing me. No, I said calmly. I'm just done paying to be erased. I hung up. Didn't block her. Didn't text a follow-up. Just walked away. Because sometimes that's the loudest thing you can do. There's a specific kind of quiet that follows a confrontation, especially the kind where you don't raise your voice. It lingers. Expands. Echoes in places you thought were already empty. After I hung up on my daughter, I expected anger. Accusations. Maybe even an apology, although I wasn't holding my breath. But what I got was something far colder. Nothing. No calls. No texts. No, let's talk about this. Days passed. Then a week. Just silence. And I realized something important. I'd finally stopped being necessary. And it didn't even cause a ripple. So I did what I always do when something breaks. I went to the garage. I have a workbench out there. Clean. Organized. Nothing fancy. Just a solid place where I can be methodical. And that's where I opened the spreadsheet. Not the one with payment schedules. No, I started a new one. A different kind of ledger. Not dollars and cents, but moments. Tally marks. Each one a time I showed up. Covered rent during college. Fixed her transmission when she couldn't afford it. Bought her dog's surgery. Quiet things. Things she never bragged about but always depended on. I called it the book of things not mentioned. And once you start writing it down, it grows fast. The 3 days I slept in a hospital chair when she had pneumonia at 16. The time I canceled a work conference because her prom date bailed and she didn't want to go alone. The countless weekends I let her cry about boys who left, while I sat with a beer I never finished, just listening. The thing about quiet people is that our love often looks like logistics. But it's love, all the same. We don't perform it, we execute it. We show up at 6 a.m. with jumper cables. We say, don't worry about it, and cover the damage. We remember to replace the air filters in your first apartment before you even know that's a thing you're supposed to do. But none of that makes it onto Instagram. None of it gets a toast at the wedding. And that's when I started noticing the pattern for real. I had been edited out long before the engagement dinner. This didn't start with the wedding. This was the final chapter in a rewrite I hadn't authorized. A new story where the father was the distant one, the uninvolved one, the placeholder who faded out conveniently whenever the plot needed a clean narrative. It wasn't that I wanted credit, but erasure? That was something different, something sharp, something strategic. So I started organizing more than invoices. I pulled phone records, old emails, pictures. I wasn't being petty, I was just waking up. You can't heal from something while you're still inside the lie. And the lie was simple, that I was always welcome, that I was still a father in more than name. But I wasn't. I was a donor, a utility. I even found a group chat screenshot someone sent me months ago, wedding stuff. Her mother had typed something that hit me harder than any of the bills. We'll keep Daniel out of the spotlight. He's too awkward for the formal stuff. Too awkward. That's what decades of quiet stability had earned me. Awkward. I printed that message. Taped it to the inside of my workbench drawer. Not out of bitterness, clarity. It was the final entry in the book of things not mentioned. The final receipt. That night, I made a second list. Not of payments I'd canceled, but of people who might ask questions when the wedding started falling apart. Not out of vengeance. Just preparation. There's a difference. I didn't want to be caught off guard when the phone started ringing. I listed her fiancé's parents, her maid of honor, the planner, and yes, her mother. I imagined each of them calling, trying to smooth things over or clear up a misunderstanding. And I rehearsed my answer in my head. There's no misunderstanding. I just stopped participating in my own disrespect. You know what nobody tells you? When you stop begging to be understood, you start becoming dangerous. To people who rely on your silence to survive. The week after I canceled the payments, the email started. First, the planner. Confused. Then alarmed. Then passive-aggressive. Then outright frustrated. She copied my daughter on one of the last ones. If Mr. Merton is no longer contributing, we need to drastically rework the guest list and food options. That line? That was a gift. It made the invisible visible. I didn't reply. Let them stew. Let them realize just how much weight I was holding up. Weight they never thanked me for. They built a whole cathedral on the bones of my support, then locked the doors the moment I asked to sit in the back pew. Well, cathedrals crumble too. But here's the part one didn't expect. Somewhere between the spreadsheets and the screenshots, I stopped feeling hurt. I started feeling free. Because once you stop begging to be chosen, you start choosing yourself. And in that space, a strange new emotion creeps in. Not revenge. Not rage. Just peace. Cold, quiet peace. I took a walk that night. No destination. Just my hands in my pockets and the sound of my shoes on the pavement. And I realized something else. This wasn't about punishing her. It was about stopping the reward. Stopping the funding of a version of love where I didn't exist. They say love is unconditional. But respect isn't. And if you confuse the two, you'll go broke in more ways than one. By the time I got home, I knew what chapter 4 would be. I just had to wait for the day itself. Let it arrive. Let them scramble. Let the seams split on their perfect little show. Because here's the thing, I don't need to ruin the wedding. I just need to stop holding it up. The morning of the wedding arrived the same way all lies do. Beautiful on the outside, brittle underneath. I knew the venue. I'd paid the deposit months ago. A vineyard 2 towns over. Classic white pergola, string lights, overpriced rustic charm. When I chose it, it was because she said it made her feel held. That word stuck with me, held. Funny how people can feel held by a place and not by the person who gave it to them. I wasn't there that morning. I was at home. Made myself coffee. Sat at the kitchen table with the blinds half drawn. No suit. No tie. No urge to interrupt. I just waited. Not for revenge. Just the inevitable gravity of what happens when a structure loses its support. People think destruction requires action. Most of the time, it just takes stepping back. The first text came from an unknown number around 9:12 a.m. Hi, this is Haley from Vine and Vow Events. Are you available for a quick call? I wasn't. Didn't reply. At 9:34, a second one. Hi, Mr. Merton. This is Rachel, the florist. We were expecting the second half of the payment today, but haven't received confirmation. Please let me know how you'd like to proceed. I read it twice. Then closed my phone. Stirred my coffee. Thought about going for a walk, but something told me to stay close. Not out of curiosity, out of instinct. Not for her. For me. By 10:07, the voicemail came. My daughter's voice, tight and strained. Dad, please call me. There's a misunderstanding with the vendors and I. I really need you to clear this up. Just please. She didn't say, I love you. Didn't say, I miss you. Just please. It wasn't a request for connection. It was a transaction in crisis. I looked at the calendar taped to my fridge. Her name was still circled on the date. Wedding day? I let it sit there like that. Undisturbed. I pictured the venue. Guests arriving in ironed suits, pastel dresses, heels already sinking into vineyard grass. Staff rushing around with clipboards, panic held just beneath the surface. And her, my daughter, in some makeup room, getting her hair pinned, holding back tears not because the moment was emotional, but because it was unraveling and she couldn't stop it. It wasn't sabotage. I hadn't done anything except stop enabling the performance. By 11:23, I got a call from her fiancé's father. I didn't answer. He left a message. Daniel, hey. Listen, not sure what's going on, but there's some confusion with a few of the services today. If you could give me a call back, we'd really appreciate your help. We'd really appreciate your help. That's what I had always been, help. Not family, not father, just quiet reinforcement. Well, the structure was failing, and the reinforcements weren't coming. At 12:14 p.m., I got a final message from my daughter. A voice memo, not a text. I don't understand why you're doing this. You didn't even try to talk to me. You're making me look stupid in front of everyone. I told you this day wasn't about you. Why couldn't you just be normal, just once? I played it twice, then deleted it. Because that's when it hit me, the final insult wasn't the erasure. It was the blame. Even as everything crumbled, she couldn't imagine that she might have played a part. That maybe asking your father to disappear one too many times carries consequences. That maybe invisibility has a cost. Around 1 p.m., I took a drive. Not to the venue, just around town. Ended up at a hardware store, of all places. Walked the aisles like it was any Saturday. Bought light bulbs. A new air filter. Nothing urgent. Just movement. Life. The world didn't stop because their wedding hit turbulence. That was the revelation. It never does. I didn't need to witness the chaos. I already knew how it would unfold. The florist would scale back. The programs would be missing entirely. The caterer, unsure of full payment, would go minimalist. And somewhere in the crowd, someone would whisper, "Didn't her dad pay for most of this?" And someone else would say, "I thought he wasn't invited." And somewhere between those two statements, the truth would hang quiet and damning. I imagined the photographer snapping shots that would later need heavy cropping, and the DJ announcing a first dance that nobody quite felt like clapping for. They'd still go through with it, I was sure. You don't pull out of a show when the guests are already seated. But it would echo. Every missing flower arrangement, every half-prepared plate, every empty chair would tell a story that no one wanted to say out loud. The man they erased himself in return. And he took his name with him. I got home around 4:30 p.m. Checked my phone. No new messages. I didn't expect any. And that, strangely, brought peace. There's power in knowing you didn't have to scream to be heard. That you didn't have to break anything to make your point. All I did was withdraw what they never deserved to begin with. My silence, my support, my participation in a story that never once asked what I needed in return. Later that night, I sat in the living room. A quiet space. My own. I lit a candle. Not for mood, not for symbolism. Just because the scent calmed me. It was cedar and leather. Something grounded. Real. That's when I realized something else. I didn't miss the wedding. Because it wasn't mine to miss. It was theirs to ruin. It was 12 days before she called again. Not a text. Not a voicemail. A real call. Middle of the afternoon on a Thursday, while I was swapping out a busted smoke detector in the guest room. I didn't rush to answer. Let it ring halfway through before I picked up. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted her to feel it. That hesitation. That slight delay where she wasn't sure if I'd come back. "Dad," she said. Her voice was quieter than I expected. Not soft. Strained. Like someone who'd been rehearsing their calm for days, but couldn't hold it quite right. "Yeah," I said. She didn't speak right away. I heard her swallow. "You weren't at the wedding." I leaned against the doorframe. The old detector dangled from two red wires like a broken apology. "No," I said. "I wasn't." I waited. For a while. A pause. I thought maybe you'd surprise me. Even just show up for the back half. I looked at the ceiling. "You asked me not to make things uncomfortable." "That's not what I meant." "No," I said. "It's what you said." She went quiet again. I could almost hear her shifting in place. The clink of a ring against her phone. Maybe her wedding band. Maybe the one I paid for, before I canceled the transaction. "Everyone kept asking where you were," she said. It was embarrassing. I let the silence sit for a beat. "Too. I'm sure it was. You made me look like a liar." That pulled something sharp in me. Not anger. Not guilt. Just a deep, exhausted kind of disbelief. "I didn't make you look like anything," I said. "You did that. When you told a room full of people I didn't exist. When you told vendors to contact me for money, but not for input. When you asked me to come to your engagement dinner, and then carry trays out the back door. You never what? I asked. You never meant for it to feel that way? You never realized how many times you asked me to stay quiet so you didn't have to explain me? Because I realized. Every time you said, low-key, what you meant was invisible, unacknowledged, disposable. Her breath hitched, like she was about to say something and then swallowed it instead. Good. Let her feel the weight of unspoken words for once. You could have told me, she said finally, quieter now. You could have told me you were canceling everything. You didn't tell me you were writing me out, I said. You didn't ask me if I wanted to walk you down the aisle. You didn't save me a seat. Hell, you didn't even give me a title. There was silence on the line. Then, I didn't think I had to. And there it was. The truth. Not the mistake. The belief. I know, I said. That's the part that hurt. Another pause. This one longer. I didn't feel it. You know what Mom said? She offered, trying to pivot. She said you were always distant. That this just proved it. I almost smiled. Not because it was funny. Because it was so familiar. She always needed the story to end with her being the victim, I said. So she could be the hero too. But you know the truth, don't you? A pause. I think I do now, she said. That hit harder than I expected. Not because it healed anything, but because it cracked something open. She started crying then. Not loud. Not performative. Just small, aching sounds that came from a place deeper than embarrassment. I didn't know it would fall apart like that, she said. It wasn't just the food and the flowers. Everything felt off. Like people were tense. The whole day felt hollow. I didn't say anything. I thought it would still be beautiful, she added. Even without you there. And was it? I asked, not with malice. Just curiosity. No, she said. It wasn't. I waited. I gave her the grace she never gave me. The chance to speak without being rushed. I don't know how to fix this, she said eventually. You might not, I said. Some things you don't fix. You just stop repeating them. So what happens now? I let out a breath. Walked back to the window. Sunlight was falling across the backyard, soft and clean. The kind of light you don't notice until you're finally sitting still enough to see it. I don't know, I said. But I'm not coming back just to be forgotten again. She didn't respond. And that was fine. I want you to be happy, I continued. I really do. But I'm not funding that happiness at the expense of my own anymore. I don't belong in the shadows of your life. And I'm done paying rent to live there. The line went quiet. And then she whispered, I'm sorry. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Because that apology wasn't for me, it was for her. And maybe for the version of herself she'd ignored, the one who remembered who I used to be. We didn't say goodbye. We just let the call end. That night, I slept for the first time in weeks without grinding my teeth. The kind of sleep that feels earned. Like something sacred finally put to rest. Because the truth is, you don't have to burn bridges to leave a place. Sometimes, you just stop walking back over them. 3 months passed. That's how long it took for the world to stop spinning around the wreckage. No more calls. No more emails. Just the slow, inevitable drift that happens after a family breaks a silence it can't put back together. I didn't reach out. She didn't either. And that was okay. Some absences don't beg to be filled. They just make space for something new. My house was quieter now, but not empty. I started hosting small dinners again. Friends from work, neighbors, my goddaughter, and her wife. I didn't mention the wedding unless someone brought it up, which, surprisingly, they rarely did. People can feel grief without needing its details. They just stay close, refill your glass, ask if you need another folding chair. The kind of presence that doesn't demand a story to earn its place. One afternoon in late spring, I got a small, padded envelope in the mail. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting. Her handwriting. It had a hesitation in it, letters formed like she wasn't sure they should exist at all. Inside was a wedding favor. A tiny tin of mints with their initials stamped in cursive, A&D. Below it, thanks for being part of our day. No note. No explanation. Just that. The tin was empty. I held it for a long time. Turned it over in my palm like it might suddenly reveal a hidden message. But there was nothing. Just silence sealed in metal. Fitting. In some strange way, it was the most honest gift I'd ever received from her. I went out to the backyard and lit the fire pit. Let it burn low, slow. I didn't throw the tin in right away. First, I set it on the edge of the bricks and watched it catch the light. Then I thought about all the rooms I sat in quietly. The celebrations I helped build but was never welcomed into. The years of being low-key for the sake of someone else's comfort. Then I picked it up and dropped it into the flames. It didn't explode, didn't sizzle, just blackened slowly, curling in the heat until it was barely a memory. The next day, I cleared out the storage closet in the hallway. Found a box marked wedding stuff, receipts, contracts, old drafts of the guest list. One RSVP envelope had my name misspelled. I laughed when I saw it. Not bitterly, just with a tired kind of grace. I tossed it all, every last piece. Not to forget, just to finally stop preserving it. Grief has this weird habit of convincing you that keeping the broken pieces means honoring the thing you lost. But all it really does is weigh you down when you're trying to stand up again. I replaced the storage box with something else, a card table and 2 new folding chairs. I'd always meant to buy them. Not for her. For whoever shows up next and sees me fully. No scripts. No shame. Just a man who knows the value of his own damn presence. You want to know the truth? I don't hate my daughter. I just don't trust her with my silence anymore. There's a difference. And it's the kind of difference that lets you sleep at night without checking your phone. A few weeks later, my goddaughter came over. She brought homemade bread and stories from her garden. We sat out back until the sun dropped low enough to stretch the shadows across the lawn. At one point, she asked, "Do you think she'll ever come around?" I shrugged. Maybe, but I'm not waiting at the window. She nodded, didn't push, just tore off a piece of bread and passed it to me. That's the thing about real connection. It doesn't demand forgiveness to stay. It just sits beside you while you rebuild. So here's where I leave the story. No dramatic reunion. No final speech. No moment where she runs down the driveway sobbing for redemption. Just peace. Not the kind I paid for. The kind I earned. There's still an open seat at my table. But not for ghosts. Not for versions of people who only love you when you're quiet, convenient, and easy to edit out. If she ever finds her way back here, she'll find someone different. Someone who doesn't ask for a seat anymore. Someone who built his own and said it like it mattered. If you've ever felt like you gave everything and still got left out, you're not alone. I tell stories like this every day about quiet strength, hard choices, and finding peace on your own terms. If that speaks to you, hit subscribe. You belong here. See you soon in the next story.